Welcome to the State, Tribal, Local Plans and Grants Division's presentation on end-of-year reporting for state historic preservation offices. Why do we do an end-of-year report? The purpose of these reports is to tell us the work that's being done that was identified as needed by the National Historic Preservation Act. So we want to know what work occurred, what you accomplished, how you spent the money, what conditions of the grants were met and maybe were not met, and the accomplishments that you achieved throughout the 2 years or perhaps more that your grant was open. Our division, more fondly known as Steel Pig, has had some changes over the past year, some departures and additions. My name is Megan Brown. I'm the chief of Steel Pig. Our grant management specialists are Lindsay Alston, James Alvey, Olivier Brunet, Marla Collum, Corey Kegereis, Jessica Kelly, Madeline Kahns, Taylor Pearlstein, Demetra Rohn, and Seth Tinkham. We also have staff that works with us on preservation planning, David Banks, outreach and education, Catherine Carey, our program assistant, Dara Green, our policy historian, John Renaud, and our historic preservation contractor, Jean Stoll. We also have several ACE fellows that work with us on various topics, and you can see their names listed here. For most of you, your grant agreement has had a 2-year lifespan. So we are looking at closing out your 2021 grant and reporting on the first year of your 2022 grant. Now, some of that's a bit different because of COVID and extensions, but we'll talk a little bit more about that. Grants are awarded every year, so that means you'll always have at least 2 grants open and active. And we are looking for 2022 grants to give you possibly 3 years, so that will make it even more complicated. For those of you that got grants extended during COVID, keep in mind that the Park Service has to extend the whole grant. Even if you were just needing an extension for CLG subgrants, we have to extend the whole thing. So that means that whole grant is still open and you need to help us close that out. So you're going to file and submit an end-of-year report. Some of you may be doing this for your 2019 or your 2020 grants that got extended within 120 days of the end date of your grant. So this means most reporting going forward is going to be due January 31st. That will be different than the December 31st deadline that you've had, but we are treating all the grants the same to keep things simple. So January 31st is the deadline for all reporting. You don't need to give us a carryover statement again for extended grants, and in fact, the HPF Online system won't let you do that currently. We do need a final SF425 if you're closing out. If it's interim and you're being extended, then mark it interim, please. We need a 428A if it's extended, and the PADB, Project Activity Database, should also be updated so we know the status of your subgrants and in-house projects, should they either be continuing or closed. When you're ready to close, and that can happen at any point, in fact, we encourage you to close those extended grants out as soon as you can and not wait until that 120 days or that January deadline. Please make sure you update the Project Activity Database with results, submit a final 425, submit a 428B on equipment, and then submit to us any products that were produced from the extended grants. In general, for reporting, you've got 2 places that you're going to do reporting these days. One is in the HPF Online, and this is a system that's open to you at all times, so that reporting can be taking place at any point. We want you to focus on the Project Activity Database, and that's going to help us update the 10% pass-throughs to CLGs automatically when you put in your expenditures. There's an unexpended funds carryover table to show you what you are carrying over. You'll need to complete the non-federal matching share report, your cumulative products tables in each of the program areas, including planning, that is no longer optional, success stories, final reports for National Historic Landmarks, and then the second piece is in grant solutions now. Last year we took it via email. We would appreciate you doing it in grant solutions. If you have some complication, please let your grant manager know. But you need to fill out the 425, which you can actually do within grant solutions, and I'll help you check your match. Attach the 428 series, and then also send us the signed carryover statement, which you complete in the HPF Online, and then you can upload to Grant Solutions. We're going to go into more detail on all these items as part of this webinar. So what's reported in the HPF Online database and for the end of year report? So you're going to focus on two sections, and this should be familiar from the application. Is the cumulative products table, which tells us the work that you've accomplished in the 8 program areas that are required by the National Historic Preservation Act. These are what has been accomplished over the time period of the last year. So keep in mind that's how we're reporting on that section. Then the project activity database. So we're going to look at closeouts for projects that are finished, and then updates for projects that are active. In the project activity database, please ensure that all the fields are filled in correctly, and double check because there are some defaults that you have to enter, and you may be getting error messages if you're not filling those out. Each project activity needs a descriptive title and adequate description. We need to ensure that the activity is eligible, measurable, and tangible, and these are all the checks that my staff will be doing on what you input. The closing year project should be marked completed or canceled unless you had an extension, and then you would leave those as still active. Be sure to fill out the results section. So you're telling us at the beginning what you're proposing, and then you're telling us how it went. It may not always go well, but we need to know what happened with the grant funding. And then all 8 required program areas must be covered. You may do this in your in-house projects, but you also need to tag your subgrants and contracts to match those program areas. Explain any major differences between original projections and the actual work that was completed. So that could be the amount of work done. It could be the amount of money spent. If a project came in under budget and you redistributed, please put a comment and tell us where that money goes in that comment box. Otherwise, we're going to ask you that question. And also don't forget, if you're working with a National Historic Landmark, there are different requirements there. We do have to complete Section 110 review with regional offices on those, and we will need a copy of any final project reports for any work you did that physically affected an NHL. Here's some examples of what we're looking for in the project results. Down at the bottom, just kind of telling us, yeah, it went great. That doesn't really tell us what's going on. So under, an example like National Register activity, please go ahead and tell us some specifics. This might be a very specific, and you may not need to go this far into depth, but this is the kind of information that we're looking for in that project result. Project titles. It needs to be clear when we pull reports and things that what that project is doing, so you can see these are a bit more specific versus the ones at the bottom that are kind of fairly general and don't really tell us what's happening with the project. For each of the projects that you do in-house or subgrants, you need to enter planning objectives, and this is where that relationship part of the reporting starts. So this is all matching back up to your approved state plan. So please make sure to go in and enter the state planning objectives. You hopefully already did this. Maybe something has changed or you need to add another planning objective to the project, and that's okay. You should add objectives as soon as the Park Service approves the plan. But if you have projects that were operating on your previous plan, don't touch those or change those. Do not delete any past objectives. Either it messes up the database and you'll delete them from all the previous plans and objectives that you entered in the past or others entered before you. Leave it as is until your next plan is approved. And you can see here just some arrows pointing out the state plan objectives. Here's where you add new objectives should you have a new plan. And then you'll go into each project and tag those objectives. So we want to see that you're linking up to things that you identified as needed in your state plan. And if you have questions about this, David Banks on our staff is happy to help with that part of the process. So we've talked about the project activity database that we fondly call the PADB. Let's talk about the cumulative products tables. So basically we're comparing the estimates that you made as part of the applications and then the actual results that you got. If there's a significant difference between those two, please explain that in the comment box. It could be Recovery Act funding, increased your survey numbers. It could be a large highway project, added 106 reviews, those types of things. Just tell us what was going on, and that'll help us not have to ask you that question. The data that you put in the cumulative products table should reflect what's in the PADB. So if you did fund a large survey project, we'd expect to see that those numbers reflected under survey and inventory in the cumulative products table. For the actuals, the Park Service enters some of these numbers for you and may not have them entered. They're entered now, but they may not be entered at the time you're working on your report. We enter the CLG, the tax numbers, and the National Register listings, as well as the number of federal nominations commented on. So you don't need to worry about those pieces. And if there's a lot of productivity in a specific cumulative products or program area, please consider reporting on that as an achievement in your success stories. So for those of you that are states and not territories and not freely associated states, so not DC, we need to ensure that you've passed through that 10% to your certified local governments. Now the HPF Online does a lot of this for you. And I encourage you to check that CLG pass-through report for both your active and your completed years. And you can see here in the red box that it tells you that you're meeting the 10%. And if you aren't, it will tell you what the recapture is. As a reminder, you need to be spending a full 10%, not 9.99% with your CLGs. So I encourage you to check this. That data all pulls from the project activity database report. So where you put the planned, federal spent, and match spent expenditures in the PADB, then those numbers carry forward into these reports. The carryover statement is going to tell us what you have obligated to subgrants and contracts. You can see that in the red boxes here, as well as the amount that you may not have spent already. It will also calculate the amount of carryover for you, and this must be signed. There's a space comment box with this report that you can enter in a reason for if you need to request a waiver and you have not been able to spend a full 75% in the first year. We understand that happens a lot now, especially with late appropriations. So please just make that statement, and the odds of you getting a waiver are very high. So don't worry too much about that in this day and age. The PADB carryover statement is a place that we do some double checks. So we check it against the active year 425. So you can see how these colored boxes match up. So this is a good way for you to check that 425 to make sure it's matching up with the carryover statement. This is one of the places that we find the most mistakes and that we ask for the most corrections. So please do take a close look at this slide and see how this matches up with the costs you've incurred, the amount you've committed to subgrants, the uncommitted carryover, and then the total grant amount. The 425 is an important form. It's a required federal form for all grants, not just HPF grants. And you will be submitting 2 of those in Grant Solutions, or you may be submitting more if you have some other grants outstanding that were extended. So you're going to submit one for the closing year for fiscal year 2020. Hopefully that's a final, unless you've gotten that grant extended, and one for the active grant, so to tell us where you are in the first year of spending for fiscal year 2021. You can find information in Grant Solutions. You can complete it in Grant Solutions. And then we also have some information here, links to the forms if you want to see how they look in their reporting style. In addition, we ask you to fill out the non-federal matching share report. So this is only for the closing year, so 2020. We want to know how much match has been spent. Make sure it meets the 40% required match, and find out what sources that match is coming from. Some of that will be from your CLGs. Most of it will likely be state funds, but you might have some federal sources if it's CDBG funding, nonprofit, commercial, or private funding to report. Remember, this is on the closing grant for both years and the total match that has been spent. If that grant has been extended, please tell us where you're at in the matching share so far. Here's an example of the non-federal matching share report and one of the places that we do a double check. So you can see in your subgrant reporting, it tells you how much match is expended to date for CLGs. We are going to check that against what you say you've spent in the matching share report. This is a place we often find some discrepancies, so you can double check that for us before you turn it in. In addition, we're going to look at that closeout 425, see what you reported as total match, and that should match the amount in the total column, the blue boxes. So you can see the CLG match is red and the total match is in blue. The 428 series is another federal requirement for all federal grants, and this is to report on equipment. Equipment is anything over $5,000 that has a life of more than a year. Oftentimes you have nothing to report on this, and that's okay. You can just mark no equipment purchase, but we do have to have a copy of these forms for each active grant, and they must be submitted annually. For your grant that's open, we need to see a 428A. So this kind of gives us a status report on if you've purchased equipment or not. It has to be completed even if nothing was purchased. For your closeout of the grant, either your 2020 grant or maybe some that you've had extended, we need a 428B. That's the final form. And again, if you haven't purchased anything, just let us know that. If you have purchased equipment and sold it, or intend to sell it, or intend to give it to another agency or something like that, you need to do a 428C disposition request and have that approved before any disposition of that equipment takes place. The end of year report has some additional requirements. We'd like to see 3 success stories from you that help share the benefits. Models that we can share often are featured in the HPF annual report. You can do this in the HPF Online. We need digital copies of any products produced under the closing of the grant. So when your subgrants, if you've completed a walking tour brochure or design guidelines or HSR or something like that, we want to see digital copies of those. Any special conditions that might have been assigned to you to work on things or fix some corrections or a staffing plan or those types of things, please make sure we've received copies of those. And your statewide plan must be current, either through a new plan being approved or an extension received from our office. There are also some FSRS USA spending reporting requirements. These have gotten a little bit tricky, so any subgrants awarded after November 2020, you need to report if they're greater than $30,000. Subgrants awarded prior to November 2020 if they're over $25,000. So please ensure that you've done that subgrant reporting. This should actually be done when you award the subgrant, but we will be going back and checking that as part of your end of year reporting to make sure that happens. Grant Solutions is also kind of a new thing that we're dealing with. We entered into it last year and awarded the first grants in it this past summer. So getting started and working with it, there's information on our SHPO webpage on our site, and I encourage you to look at that. We've got a new website that's got a lot of new information that can help you navigate some of these things. Also, our HPF Online has had some security updates and some user management changes. So you do have a unique username, your email, and a password that you establish that we don't know what that is. You do have to maintain the security of each of your accounts, and if you don't log in, I believe every 30 to 60 days, you will have to reset your password. So I encourage you to kind of set a reminder to keep logging in and checking on that HPF. If you have any technical issues with that, please email us at steelpig@nps.gov, and Dara Green and our staff will help you with that. There is now an account creation and closure form, so if you have new staff coming on board that need access to HPF Online, you'll need to fill out this form and send it to us. If you have staff departing, we also ask that you fill out this form and send it to us, and usually that's going to come from a deputy SHPO or SHPO. So that we can keep these accounts up to date. The form you can receive from us by just emailing us, and we're also going to make that available on the website. Requests, we need to get that from the SHPO. We will then set up an account and email that individual. We do try to keep up with all the accounts and acknowledge those requests within 3 business days. So if you haven't heard from us in that time, we may not have gotten the email, and please do check with us. This is the account form, fairly simple, and you can fill that out and send that to us digitally. We've mentioned a couple times about submitting digital products. Our methods for that has changed over the past couple years. We used to send you a file transfer link, and that I guess that service has gone away from us, so we're now using SharePoint. You will email our main box and request a link to your SharePoint folder, and that will come with more information as well as how to upload those files. Keep in mind there are also instructions in your grant agreement, especially with how to name the files and provide us with a file list so we know what we're receiving from you. That is all we have for today. I want to thank you for your time and attention, especially for the dedication of your offices to historic preservation in your state or your territory or your district. If you have questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to your grant manager. As I said at the beginning, we've had some staff changes, so we'll be reassigning and moving some states around, but for now, please go with who you know. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us at steelpig@nps.gov or our main number. And then please do take a little time to go and check out our new website at go.nps.gov/SHPO. We've reorganized some information. Hopefully it's a little more helpful, and we're open to suggestions or if there's something else that you need to see there. Again, please let us know how we can help. We look for your reporting to be due in by January 31st or hopefully before, so that helps us a lot, not having a backlog of everyone coming in at once. Thank you for your time, and Happy New Year to all, and we will talk to you soon.